Hello and welcome to the NTN Midday Update for today, Friday, the 28th of May, 2021. My name is Jessie Leonce, and we have in studio for today's update the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Dr. Mashama Sealey, to provide us with the latest details coming out of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force in terms of their COVID-19 response. You would be aware that the state of emergency was extended to the 16th of October in the Honorable House, and the COVID-19 protocols have also been extended into June. At this time, I now hand over to you, Dr. Sealey, to provide us with an update. Good afternoon, by the way.
Good afternoon.
Formal congratulations
Thank you
on your appointment.
Thank you very much. So the updates on COVID breaches as of today, May 28th, 2021. The following COVID breaches were recorded by the Royal St. Lucia Police Force. Business operation breaches, 194. Total arrested, 30. Total convicted, 1. Complaints lodged, 8. Number of persons warned, 156. Home quarantine breaches, 17. State quarantine breaches, 5. And in those cases, the individuals were picked up and escorted to a quarantine site. Home parties, 13. Number of people arrested, 4. Complaints lodged, 2. Number of individuals warned, 7. Minibus travel breaches, 163. And we conducted 163 warnings. Individual protocol breaches, and that would be the non-adherence to wearing a mask, 981. Number of arrests, 140. Number of convictions, 45. Complaints lodged, 4. Warnings, 837. In the cases where 140 people were arrested, these were individuals who did have a mask on their person. They refused to wear a mask or indicated that they were protesting against wearing a mask. Mass crowd breaches, 30. Number of persons arrested, 2. Complaints lodged, 8. Warnings, 20. Hotel breaches, 13. Number of arrests, 1. Warnings, 12. Curfew breaches, and that would be people who are out and about after 9 p.m., 250. Number of arrests, 110. Number of convictions, 9. Warnings, 129. Complaints lodged, 10. The total number of persons arrested, 288. Complaints lodged, 16. Number of convictions, 55. Number of cases pending in the court, both in the north and in the south, 125. The number of warnings given thus far that are recorded, 1,329. On Monday, the 27th of May, which was a holiday, a team of officers conducted patrols in order to enforce COVID protocols, and the results are as follows. Number of vehicles stopped, 146. Number of vehicles impounded, 7. Number of individuals searched, 14. Traffic tickets issued, 20. The Royal St. Lucia Police Force would like to thank everyone who continues to follow the protocols, and we would like to encourage the few who are still breaching protocols to follow the protocols for the safety of themselves, their families, and the community. When we do not follow the protocols, it causes COVID to flourish and so it takes longer for us to recover and longer for us to return to some sense of normalcy. I would like to also add that we found in the past days, that people use the NEMO passes for purposes other than what it was issued for. And they use them to stay out after curfew. And we're asking that this habit stops, or else those passes will be confiscated. They're issued so you can be out and about for work purposes. Those are the reasons why people requested the passes, and so we are asking to use them for the intent and the purposes they were issued for. Once again, we encourage you to wear your mask properly. That is, your mask should cover your nose, your mouth, and your chin. Often we see people, they do have a mask on their face, but it's under their nose, resting on their lips, or under the chin. That is not safe. Also, we encourage you to sanitize and to maintain social distancing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sealey. First question from me. Well, by the way, if you are watching on air online, you would like to pose a question to the Assistant Commissioner of Police, Dr. Mashama Sealey, following her presentation, giving us an update on the COVID-19 protocol infractions for this last period. And you can post onto our Facebook platform and also on our YouTube channel any of your questions, comments, queries, or commendations. Dr. Sealey, I have a question with respect to the businesses, because that was the first thing you started with. In terms of, what indication can you give us in terms of the business infractions within the business sector for this period in contrast to previous periods? And also, what form did these infractions take? Because we know one of the main things is the curfew, closing up in time, 9 p.m., so that the staff could get home.
Okay, so when we say businesses, it's a combination of bars, supermarkets, and other, I don't say businesses again, but other operations. They sell items to the public. They either do not have proper protocols in place, so they do not have sanitizing stations. They do not have, or they do not maintain social distancing when people are going to the teller on the line or the clerk on the line. And so oftentimes the officers have to go in and ensure that this is done. We also have an issue where the curfew is at 9 and businesses close exactly at 9 o'clock. And so what you find is that after 9, there are hundreds of vehicles out on the road, and it's after curfew. So we're asking that businesses close in time so that their workers and they themselves can get home before curfew, which is 9 o'clock, so that we can enforce the protocols and ensure that everyone is safe. So these are the two issues, the non-adherence in terms of having those sanitizing stations and doing the social distancing within the stores, and closing exactly at curfew hours. And so you find there are hundreds of vehicles out and it looks like we're not enforcing, but of course you have to give people a reasonable time to go home. So instead of us having to now chase people down, because it's over a year that we're fighting COVID, and there are countries that do not have these issues and they have been able to open and to have activities and social activities and return to a sense of normalcy. But the longer we take to adhere, the longer it takes for us to recover.
Okay. In terms of social gatherings that have had to be intercepted, speak to us about, have they been clustered around, let's say, Mother's Day activities or the Whit Monday holiday? Where were they placed in the timeline?
I would say when it comes to issues for breaches, you'll find that we have those issues more on the weekend now. So from Friday to Sunday, we have to go to, we're given information that somebody's having a house party. It's not, you know, their family members are not the ones at the party. It's more than the 10 that is allotted in the protocol. And so we have to shut down those activities. During the holidays, you will find people congregating on the beaches in large numbers, especially Pigeon Point Beach and Sandy Beach, and they're not maintaining the social distancing as they should. And then you'll find 2 weeks later we have an increase in infections. So we're encouraging everyone to follow the protocols. Policing is not just us in uniform. We as individuals have a personal responsibility to one another, and so just simply telling whether it is your relative or your friend to follow the protocols does assist in terms of ensuring everybody is safe and we maintain the protocols which were developed for our safety.
How concerning is it for the force in terms of those figures that we've been hearing of arrests and so on? What indication is it giving the force, and what plans is the force making to manage things better? Because we saw arrests as compared to the previous period. Are they more or less?
I would say that with the breaches, we found they've increased a little bit as the warden's tenure ended. People feel that they're a little more free, and so there's a slight increase, especially in the non-adherence in terms of wearing the mask and the curfew breaches. COVID started in St. Lucia around March last year. We're in May going into June, and we should not still have to run after people and tell them to wear a mask, because it's for our safety. And you're in public, and we're not saying to wear it at your home or when you go to sleep. We're saying when you're in public to wear the mask and wear it properly. What we also find is that the areas where the breaches increase, those are the areas where the infections also increase. So that is why you see us coming here and encouraging people to follow the protocols, because it makes life simpler for everybody, and it helps in terms of mitigation against the virus, because we're not fighting something we can see. It's a disease.
And going back to your word on the wardens, they've definitely created a space for themselves in terms of being able to have persons adhere to the protocols and so on. How has the Royal St. Lucia Police Force filled in that void, so to speak?
Okay, so what we had to do is make use of the Special Reserve Police and the officers at the various stations to cover the quarantine sites, because we have to have a presence there, and to do our patrols. So you find us pooling officers from various areas to form those teams to do the patrols and the checks on an evening, to ensure that there's a police presence, and so people follow the protocols with regards to curfew and wearing the mask and social distancing and sanitizing.
Okay, so the home quarantine, would you say that there's been a reduction? You mentioned 17 breaches.
We've had 17 breaches, but what we found is that this week we had to escort about 6 people to the quarantine sites because they're not adhering. And when we say they're not adhering, they're leaving their homes and they're coming to town, they're going to the banks. They're not staying at home and isolating as they're supposed to. So when we get this information, and most times they admit that they did leave their homes, so they were escorted to Starfish so that they could isolate safely and mitigate against the spread in the various communities. Okay.
To go back to the businesses, what processes are in place for stopping someone in traffic after curfew and finding out that the individual's job, the individual's company that they work for, let them off at exactly 9 p.m.?
Well, the officers who will be conducting those checks, they will first, of course, you'll stop them and question them with regards to having a NEMO pass. And I would say about 50% to 65% of the people on the road usually do have a NEMO pass, and they ask where they work, and we can verify by, most times we know the areas that are open at that time based on what they do, and we can always, if we're not sure, call to double check the following day, so that if we encounter them again, we know what to do in terms of them not making use of the pass effectively. You also have people who may not have a pass, but their parents, they don't live with their parents, and their parents live alone, and so they may just be leaving their parents' house, or they're rushing to the hospital to take somebody there for medical care. So we do use discretion in terms of the excuses given when we do these traffic checks and question individuals who are out after curfew.
Okay, I want to get to special events like religious rites, weddings, funerals, and so on. Have you had to contend with any breaches in that respect?
I would say maybe in the beginning with funerals, you would find the numbers in the churches, most times they would comply, and we had persons checking to make sure the numbers were as recorded, because they had to send a list to the church and to us as well. But what we found in the earlier time was that you'd have large numbers at the cemetery. So, but we've been able to mitigate against that by having discussions with the priests or the pastors, who will then speak with the family, and most families are responsible enough to adhere to the numbers that they're supposed to have at the funerals, and so they usually do the virtual platform in terms of being able to view what is happening at the church, and in some cases even what is happening at the cemetery.
Okay. We've seen instances where the government of St. Lucia has instituted an earlier curfew on holidays. Tell us about the capacity of the Royal St. Lucia Police Force, and also the workload as compared to a day when there isn't a curfew.
There's always been a curfew.
So when there's an earlier curfew on a holiday,
yes,
as compared to it being a holiday and there's no curfew, as we saw with Monday.
Well, there was a curfew.
Well,
the curfew is 9 o'clock.
Yeah, the normal curfew, but an earlier one.
Okay, so in the past, we had an earlier curfew because we saw that the breaches were high and the infections were extremely high as well, because I'm the representative on the command center. So then, and you do a comparative analysis between the numbers given by health, and of course, you can see the correlation between, when I say correlation, I mean the relationship between our numbers with regard to the breaches and their numbers with regard to the infections. So you'll see there are particular areas where the breaches are high, and in these very areas the infections are high, which corresponds to the high breaches. So this is what we do to help us to know whether we're going to enhance our patrols, where we need to enhance our patrols, the timings, we need to change our timings. And so if we have an earlier curfew, most likely that is the impact, and so we figure if we have an earlier curfew, it will mitigate against the breaches, and there'll be less breaches because you have less time to do the breaches. And you have, I know people will be home early and you don't want to be home early, but at the end of the day, it's not something that you want to, you don't want the breaches to continue so long that our infections will be too high that we have no control over it, because you would appreciate that when our numbers increase, it affects our health system in terms of the number of beds available and so on.
Okay, understood. You mentioned patrols earlier. I just want to segue to another subject matter. The schools, some of the schools since the reopening of this, well, the opening of school for the third term, have had to contend with more than just a COVID-19 threat.
Yes.
It's also security. There have been some instances of that. also kids after school, walking home from school, have had to contend with being accosted. Tell us about the interventions of the force in response to this.
Okay, so we had a meeting with Ministry of Education, and what we have done, I don't want to call them school patrols, but we do conduct patrols in the areas where we have schools and where we found that the students are being targeted. So we're out patrolling before school ends, so that when school dismisses, the police presence is there and helps to mitigate against them being attacked or having to be victims of crime.
Okay. Final words as we wrap up for this afternoon's update.
Okay, so my final words, I will repeat myself, because this is something that I think by now we should have down pat, and that is wearing the mask properly, sanitizing and social distancing. That will help us as we continue to enforce the COVID protocols to keep everyone, including ourselves, safe, our family safe, your family safe, and to also ensure that we are able to help decrease the number of infections in St. Lucia. I would also like to just let you know that we also work with the Ministry of Equity with regards to the Youth Empowerment Project. And so we have an extempo competition coming up. I'm so excited to hear the lyrics that were created and to see the talent that we have from our inner city communities. So our participants we have 3 categories, 11 and under, from 12 to 17, and the last category from age 18 to, I think, 35. I know they have had some great lyrics and they're just practicing right now. So I encourage everyone to tune in on the 6th of June from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. to hear our talent. And the theme would be crime, violence, and community development. So in this regard, we're working with the youth. We're finding out what is affecting them and what we can do and how we can work with them better in order to keep them out of the criminal justice system. We are also having a panel discussion on the 3rd of June, and just to speak about things that ail not just St. Lucia, but other countries with regards to COVID, dealing with persons with mental issues or mental health issues, and other topics that are quite interesting. And so I would encourage persons to come on and ask questions and to participate, because what it does, it helps us to strategize better, because we are policing our country and we can't do it alone. We need to know what ails you in order for us to work together to do better in terms of making sure our communities are safe. Thank you.
Dr. Mashama Sealey, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate you speaking to us on the degree of compliance in the recent weeks by our population, business community, individuals so far, the challenges that the force has had to contend with during this period, and also filling in the space of the Peace Officers Program. We definitely commend the Royal St. Lucia Police Force for their continued efforts at maintaining law and order in St. Lucia. Hopefully we have another representative at another time to speak to us about violent crimes and the updates with respect to each of the cases in recent time. Quite a few have rocked the nation, but in this instance, we thank you for this update, Dr. Sealey. And again, congratulations to you on your promotion to the rank of Assistant Commissioner of Police.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you and the nation today.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. It's all the time that we have for this afternoon with the Midday Update. My name is Jessie Leonce. We encourage you, invite you to stay tuned to NTN for more programming that is important to our national development, important information coming out of the government of St. Lucia. Do enjoy the rest of your day and keep safe this weekend until we meet again Monday, God willing. Goodbye.